All right, welcome to another round of Let's Buy a Business. So we're going to dive in with a deal that I saw a couple years ago. Wonderful business, a really wonderful buyer, and a really wonderful seller. Everything was great, right? Problem is, the buyer didn't know that they were buying a job, even though all the alerts were there, and the owner was even telling them, the seller was even telling them that, hey, you are buying a job. Okay, this business made about $150,000 a year in profit to about $180,000. Okay, so you do the back of the napkin math. It was about a $500,000 business. There's some inventory that is involved with that, but let's dive in and how we can understand whether this was a job or not. Okay, so first off, the prior owner handled all emails. They did all customer service, emails, anything email related, they did. Okay, they did also no marketing. This was all word of mouth, and prior people who come through bought products from them, but there was no marketing. They did all shipping from their own garage. Okay, so there was no 3PL. They were handling all emails, marketing, and shipping. I'm going to make a break right here. So, current owner, what were they doing? They were doing all customer support, right? Customer support, customer service. They did no marketing or PPC, zero. They did zero of that, okay? And they had no 3PL. They were shipping out of the garage. That's okay, but it means they don't have any expenses here. Okay, my handwriting's quite ugly. Okay, so now let's erase some of this thing and figure out how we can actually establish this and reevaluate why we think this could be a good deal. Okay, the owner bought this, or the buyer bought this business. They were excited to dive in. It was a great business, had a lot of opportunity for growth. Okay, but if you think about it, it was making about $150,000 a year. So first thing they did was they took on some debt, which is okay. Okay, so if you're going to buy a business and you're taking on debt, this debt was about $7,000 to $8,000 a month. I'll put a K in there for 8,000. About $7,000 or $8,000 a month. You start doing the math, and you know what is 180 divided by 12? It's about $15,000 a month. So half of the money it was making now is going to debt. Okay, profit before 15K. We're going to keep this number in mind. Okay, now we're going to take a step back. When the owner took over, they hired someone to run email marketing. Great. But that is a minimum $2,000 a month. And they might do a good job, but they're probably not going to do a better job than you doing it, right? You care about your business more than them, okay? They also hired an agency to run their marketing. Let's do their marketing. So any decent agency is going to cost about $2,000 a month, okay? That's going to be Meta, that's going to be Google PPC, it's going to be a few things. And then they hired a 3PL, and this is the biggest one, where that's anywhere going to be $1 to maybe $4 or $5 a unit. That's kind of a big deal, okay? So what did that equal to? About $2,000 a month, okay? You can see where this math is going and why this math isn't necessarily going to add up, okay? First off, they layered it with debt, about $8,000 a month. Then they added $2,000 a month for email. Then they added $2,000 a month for PPC, and then they added $3,000 a month for the 3PL. Okay, they stopped managing the business actively. Okay, that's fine, but when you typically are buying a business, it is not passive. It's the worst form of a passive investment that you can make is buying a business. Okay, you can't add $10,000 to $16,000 a month in expenses on a business making $15,000 a month, $180,000 a year, and expect to make any money. Okay, for a business of this size, you generally are buying a job. Okay, now that owner had all the free time in the world, the new owner did, but that doesn't mean they were actually able to grow the business, because the email agency, the PPC agency, the 3PL, they're not going to treat the business better than you are, right? So you actually need to roll up your sleeves and decide, I want to grow this thing or I want to keep it passive. Over time, sure, they are paying off their debt, like this number was going down, but they weren't able to pay themselves in the short term, but they also only needed to run this business for a couple hours a week. Prior owner, she was putting in 40 hours a week, maybe even more sometimes, maybe less. But you have to understand that these types of businesses aren't going to grow without you being very active in the business. And if the owner is working 30 hours a week in the business, you're probably going to need to work more than that just to understand the industry, understand the business, and take everything over. It is okay to buy a business that looks like a job and can be a job, because you're building equity in that business. Over time, let's say, for example, we're going to start with a new sheet here. Over time, you take that business and it's making $180,000 a year in profit. And now that's $180,000 a year in profit. Now we're going to take that and we're going to turn it into, let's say, $250,000, right? That's a pretty good increase and a pretty good growth, about, I don't know, maybe 30% year over year, 30% growth. And maybe you do that over 2 years. That's very doable in the SMB space. But if over 4 years you take this business and now it's actually making $300,000 a year because you're going all in on it, okay? Now, this thing, say it gets a 3x multiple when you go to sell, 3 times 180,000. Can't do the math publicly, so that's 540. This was about what the business sold for, okay? 540,000. Now, you're getting this multiplier. It's a bigger business, it's more stable, and you might even get a better business than a 3x multiplier. But we're not going to adjust that there. We're going to keep that the same. Now, you've created some enterprise value of 300,000 of profit, times it by 3x. Now, what are you at? You're at $900,000, okay? Keep in mind, $900,000 if you wanted to exit that business, okay? When you buy a business and you layer it with debt, you're fundamentally changing everything in that business. You can't go off and just spend all the money that you have, right? Some of it's going to be going to debt and some of it is going to be going to need to pay yourself, but also some of it is going to need to be put back into the business for growth. Where acquisitions get really fun and exciting is when you buy the business for what it's doing now, and then you take it over and grow it, okay? When you grow it, you have this multiplier effect, and you can see the differences. You're not just making the sale and the exit, you're making the difference in between two, that extra $120,000, okay? So roll up your sleeves. You can buy a job, but you have to understand you are buying a job, and there's different ways to approach it. So anyways, let's go out there and buy a business.